My name is Gabriel Mitchell. I did the program in 2014, so I was the second cohort to go through, maybe like the 30th customer or something of Praxis, very much an early adopter. I did it straight out of high school, so I would have been 17, 18, something along those lines. It was very much my alternative to college. Interestingly enough, I actually did some college while I was in high school, so it wasn't from a lack of trying or anything like that. I've always loved ideas and loved learning, and so just going through the different options that were in front of me, I realized that Praxis was what I wanted to do. I've always been a very nerdy kid. Nerdy in a way that I just felt like there was so much more that I was missing out on. And I was really disappointed by the amount of intellectual engagement I was getting, especially in public school. And so I myself made the decision to do like a dual enrollment program. Like I had my parents put me in a completely different school so I'd get more. And then even then I was kind of disappointed. And I started hanging out at the local university because I was looking for like clubs to join and stuff. So here I was 16 or whatever, just really passionate about ideas. For me personally, it was things like economics and philosophy. And I felt like I just wasn't getting what I wanted in the public school system. And so I was actively looking for something else. I feel like I was in a pretty good spot where I could have done most things. Because I loved education and ideas so much, and I even come from a family of educators, I did strongly consider university. Maybe I'd be a professor or something. But there was one problem with that that really bothered me. I realized that if I loved ideas, it wasn't just about studying them locked away in some ivory tower, but about doing something with them. And it became more and more clear that if I wanted to do something with ideas, I needed to start developing those business skills, those administrative skills, more than just being a nerd. And as much as I am still a nerd and I consider it a big part of my brand, I've learned to care a lot about executing on these ideas. And so entrepreneurship, office work, those sorts of things are often just as important as reading the books. So my father's a preacher, which is a type of educator. My mother has taught art, she's taught philosophy. My sister is a librarian. I just grew up in an environment with a lot of books, a lot of passion for school in general, a lot of passion for libraries and learning things. And I was fortunate enough to grow up in an environment where I learned the value of learning, which some people don't. Some people go through school and learning is this obligation that they have to develop. But I developed it selfishly as a pleasure thing. It's fun for me to read. And that environment I think was really essential, but I understood that if I wanted to do more with those ideas, that I needed to develop those skills that it comes to entrepreneurship or office jobs or whatever, actually executing on it. I was on Facebook and I had become friends with an individual who worked for Praxis very early on, a man named Zach Slayback. And we both ran a Facebook page together about libertarian philosophy. And he's a little bit older than me and started messaging me about options as I was getting close to finishing up high school. And he suggested this Praxis thing. So one day I was traveling the country going to different conferences and I ran into Isaac Morehouse, who was speaking at an event. And he gave this really wonderful speech about the power of how to change the world. And he was talking about you can be an intellectual, you can be in the academic environments, and that is a way to impact the world. But another way to change the world is to actually build the thing. And you change people's incentives that way. And I was really inspired by what he was saying. And so I had a good long conversation with him after that conference, and I was completely sold from that moment on. The more I was researching it and the more I was talking to Isaac and TK and all these people, it became increasingly clear that this was worth the risk. That it was a decision worth making. And so that was pretty much it. It was just like that initial conversation with my friend online and then meeting Isaac in person. And then it was just a simple matter of convincing my parents and reading a little bit more and taking the jump. The biggest thing is learning by doing. This is something you really don't get in most school environments. You maybe study a subject and then get a test on it. But in the real world, the test comes first. You know, you get a promotion and now you've got to catch up and figure out how it works. You're given a project and now you've got to do the study to figure out how the project works. The test often comes first, and that's very unique. And it's something particularly unique to entrepreneurship. You cannot study your way into being an entrepreneur. You absolutely have to go and act and experiment. For example, if I was trying to teach you how to ride a bike, You wouldn't sit in a classroom for 3 months, for a year, reading about the mechanics of bicycles, the history of bicycles, how the paint is made or whatever. You would get on the bike and you would go. Entrepreneurship is much more like that. You have to actually get on the bike and go, actually experiment in the marketplace. In some sense, an entrepreneur is a form of practical philosopher. An entrepreneur constructs a theory about how the world works, what people want, which is a type of philosophy, but then goes out and tests it. And that's really powerful. You actually test your theory and see how people react and see what sort of market incentives are aligned with your theory. It's very different than sitting in the academy and writing a book and publishing it, and no one actually challenges what you believe simply because you have the degree. The entrepreneur, in many ways, is a form of active experimental philosophy. When I was in my early 20s, I started a clothing brand that was themed around cryptocurrencies. I ran that for a few years and sold it. Throughout my career, I've been in and out of startups and small businesses, but also a lot of nonprofits. And interestingly enough, now find myself in kind of an educator role for a nonprofit where I get to apply a lot of my businessy admin skill things that I've developed to an education-related role. And specifically, I help run education programs for high schoolers that can inspire them to think a bit deeper like I did. While I was doing Praxis, I got an apprenticeship, a paid internship with a small business that was selling gold and silver. And we did a good portion of our sales in Bitcoin at the time. So this is 2014, 2015. I was very fortunate to be involved in the space that early on. After Praxis, I left that company and kind of bounced around a little bit and just sort of was experimenting with being a young adult and learning what I wanted and what I cared about. And then from there, eventually started my own business and did that clothing brand and have ever since kind of gone in between startup, small business, entrepreneurial stuff, and then a lot of nonprofits usually focused on education, a lot of times education specifically in philosophy and economics. So right now, as mentioned, I work for the Foundation for Economic Education. I am the manager of student programs. So it is my job to bring speakers to schools all across the world and help students unlock their knowledge around economics, philosophy, politics, those sorts of topics. I really enjoy it. I'm having a lot of fun, but I'm also in a spot with my career where I'm ready to also be a speaker, be an intellectualizer, be someone who writes and speaks and does these sorts of things. And so I'm in a great spot right now where I'm empowered to do both the kind of administrative office job work of actually making programs happen, but also have the opportunity to sometimes speak at programs, do my own writing, build my own brand, and so on and so forth. I would not have found the career path that I am on today without Praxis. Because Praxis enabled and activated a certain mindset that I simply did not have before. I did not understand how careers worked until I went through Praxis. Just period. I did not understand what was possible until I went through Praxis. Period. I did not understand what I could do and how many options were out there until I went through Praxis. The relationship between philosophy and career in my life is in, I'd say, two different directions. One, just the fact that I love things like philosophy and big ideas means that the career choices that I make tend to be related to those things. Maybe it's working for a nonprofit that promotes those things, or maybe it's a for-profit brand that is themed around some sort of economic or big idea like cryptocurrency. The other way, though, is that I see my career as a means of experimenting and testing out my philosophical frameworks. If I truly believe, for example, that people want to be free, then I might build products that make them more free and then see how people react. And if they don't like those products, maybe my assumptions about the world are totally different. So my career when it comes to philosophy is, again, these two means. One, I'm connecting philosophy to the specific products that I work on. And then two, using these products in my career as a means to test the philosophy frameworks that I have. There's the very classic advice I give to a lot of people, which everyone has probably heard before if you're in the Praxis community. Don't do stuff you hate. I think that's a very powerful piece of advice, in part because when you are a young person, you often don't know what you love just yet. But you probably have a better sense of what you hate. And that might change over time. It might be the case that you think you hate an office job, and then when you finally get one, you realize it's not that bad. But if you don't know what to do, a good starting point is just eliminate things you don't want and then just try something else. So that's the first big piece of advice. Don't do stuff you hate. The second piece of advice I would say is understand that your career does not have to be this thing that you begrudgingly do just because you need to get a paycheck. It's okay to work for a paycheck. There's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes I have had jobs that I wasn't in love with. But I want you to understand that a career can be, and probably should be, an opportunity to pursue your values and have fun and seek meaning and build yourself up in the process. It can be this really exciting, meaningful part of your life instead of this separate thing that you're doing just because you have to. Yeah, so as mentioned, I've been involved with Praxis since 2014. This means that for over 10 years, I've been messaging people in Slack, I've been showing up to the conferences, I've been in text message chains and emails and these sorts of things. And the number one thing that makes me keep coming back is the quality and caliber of the people that I meet. These individuals are some of the smartest, most entrepreneurial, most curious people I have ever met in my entire life. And it doesn't matter what other businesses I'm involved with or any communities, I always feel that Praxis has been the best.